Memphis, find your business here. The Memphis Coupon Book is your gateway to local deals. Visit memphiscouponbook.com. Start saving today.
Have you ever opened your inbox and just wondered, how did I even get on this email list? Well, the answer often comes down to this really powerful and honestly super controversial technology called email scraping. It's a tool that can mean explosive growth for businesses, but it lives in a very, very murky ethical and legal world.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll talk about why businesses are so desperate for leads in the first place. Then we'll get into what email scraping actually is and, how the tech works under the hood. After that, we dive into the legal mess. And finally, we'll bring it all back to what really matters, your data and your privacy.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning with a problem that every single business, big or small, has to deal with: the nonstop, never-ending hunt for new customers, for new leads. It's literally the lifeblood of a company. And today, that challenge is just massive. I mean, we are drowning in information. Every single day, we create something like 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. That number is so big, it's hard to even wrap your head around. For a business, trying to find one potential customer in all that noise, it's not like finding a needle in a haystack. It's like finding a needle in a stack of 2.5 quintillion other needles. And just look at the sheer scale of the opportunity here. You've got platforms like Yellow Pages or Yelp with millions of business listings, which is already a ton. But then you look at Google Maps, over 200 million business listings. That's not a haystack anymore. That is a vast ocean of potential customers. The real question is, how on earth do you even begin to fish in an ocean that big? And that's where this technology comes in. When you're faced with an ocean of data, you look for a shortcut. You look for a bigger net. And for a lot of businesses, that net is email scraping. So what is it really? Well, at its core, it's pretty simple. Email scraping is just using a piece of software, a bot, to automatically crawl across websites, social media, online forums, you name it, and just pull out any publicly listed email addresses it can find. It turns all that messy, jumbled info on a web page into a nice, clean list. So why this crazy rush to collect all this information? It really boils down to this one powerful idea. Data is the new oil. It is the most valuable resource on the planet right now. It fuels everything from marketing campaigns to artificial intelligence. And everybody wants a piece of it. And this, right here, this is the perfect way to think about it. If data really is the new oil, then email scraping is like one of those old-school wildcat drilling rigs. It's fast, it's powerful, and it can definitely strike it rich. But it can also be incredibly messy, totally unregulated, and it might just cause a whole lot of damage along the way. All right, so we get what scraping is and why everyone's doing it, but how do these digital drilling rigs actually operate? Let's, pull back the curtain and see how the technology itself works. From 1,000 feet up, it kind of looks like this. The scraping tool looks at all these disorganized websites with bits of information scattered everywhere, and it acts like a digital translator. It takes all that chaos and turns it into structured data, perfectly neat rows and columns in a spreadsheet. On the process itself, it's actually pretty straightforward. First, you pick your target websites. Then you choose a scraping tool and you set the rules, like, hey, go find any piece of text that has an @ symbol in it. Then you just hit go and the bot does its thing. Afterwards, you clean up the list, get rid of the junk, and boom, you've got a fresh list of emails ready to go. And we're not talking about some kind of crazy science fiction here. This whole process is powered by common programming tools. Things like Beautiful Soup help parse the code of a website, and other tools like Selenium can actually control a web browser, clicking buttons, filling out forms, scrolling down the page. Basically, it does everything a human can do, but it does it thousands of times faster. Okay, and this is where our story takes a turn, because this really powerful and efficient technology runs headfirst into a dense, confusing, and constantly changing web of legal and ethical landmines. Welcome to the legal gray zone. So this is the most important thing to get. In the United States, there is no single law that just says web scraping is illegal. It's not that simple. It really exists in the state of legal limbo, where the risk all depends on what you're scraping, how you're scraping it, and where you're scraping it from.
So companies that do this face a few major legal threats. You've got the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the CFAA, which is all about accessing a computer without authorization. Then there's the DMCA, the Copyright Act, which can be a problem if a scraper has to get around something like a CAPTCHA. And of course, there's just plain old breach of contract if you violate a website's terms of service. There's even this old law, trespass to chattels, which can apply if your scraper just floods a website and causes it to slow down or crash. And if you want to see just how confusing this all is, look at the courts. In this big case with LinkedIn, a court basically said that if data is public for everyone to see, scraping it doesn't violate the CFAA. But in a different case, a court told a company called BrandTotal that, yep, by using scraping tools, they absolutely violated Meta's terms of service, and that was a breach of contract. So you have two different courts with two totally different answers. It's a mess. So all this legal stuff is interesting, for sure, but it brings up a much bigger question. Forget the companies and the lawyers for a second. What does all this mean for us, for the people whose data is actually being collected? Well, in a direct response to this explosion of data collection, governments all over the world have started to push back. We're seeing this huge new wave of privacy laws designed to give regular people like you and me actual control over our own information. And we're not talking about small rules here. These are legal heavyweights. You've got the GDPR in Europe, which has had a global impact. In the US, California's CCPA is basically setting the standard for the whole country. And then you have these super specific laws, like BIPA in Illinois, which is just for protecting things like our fingerprints and our face scans. And if you need a perfect cautionary tale for what happens when scraping goes way too far, you have to look at Clearview AI. This company scraped billions with a B, of photos from social media, from all over the web. Your photos, my photos. And they used them to build a massive facial recognition database that they sold to law enforcement. All of it without anyone's consent. And the backlash was intense. They got slapped with a 20 million euro fine in Italy for breaking GDPR. The ACLU sued them under that Illinois privacy law, which ended with them being banned from selling their database to most private companies. It just goes to show you these new privacy laws have very, very real teeth. And this is the whole point, right? This debate about scraping isn't just some abstract business problem. When these bots crawl the web, they aren't just grabbing business listings. They're grabbing your profile pictures, your public comments, your email address you posted on a forum 10 years ago. They're collecting little pieces of your digital self. And that leaves us all with a really fundamental question for the age we live in. When you put something out there on the public internet, a photo, an opinion, your contact info, where does your ownership of that information end, and where does someone else's right to collect it begin? Right now, there is still no easy answer.